Karen always believed she was on the right side of things, acting as a self-proclaimed activist. Always armed with her phone, a sense of justice, and a desire to fill that space inside of her, she spent her days exposing threats to society. At least these were threats, as she saw them, because they didn't align with what she wanted, the democracy she was fighting for. This was, after all, she had lost. However, that day following that man, standing across the street from the Tesla showroom, trying to eavesdrop on their conversation, she had no idea she was about to make the biggest mistake of her life. She had spotted him from a distance and followed him immediately. A tall figure, his face partly covered by sunglasses, the red MAGA hat he had on his head was what caught her attention. His movements were too collected, as if he was being told what to do or had an ulterior motive. To Karen, that was more than enough to have him suffer and be humiliated. With all her might, she couldn't let this moment pass her by. This is what she stood against as an activist, and she had to do something about it. She informed her followers in the online space and solicited support for justice before dialing 911. As she stood in the corner and waited for the police, her heart raced with excitement. She could hear the sirens coming her way from a distance, her camera set to record what she seemed so certain would be another victory for her, another justice served. However, when the officers stepped inside, something else happened. They stopped and were talking to the man. One of them asked the man to remove his sunglasses. Another hesitated before speaking into his radio. Karen wasn't smiling anymore. What was going on? This was not how it was supposed to be. They shouldn't be all chatty and laughing. Then, as the man turned, taking a seat toward the window, he and the officers spoke, but she was yet to identify him, not until he removed the MAGA hat he had on. Karen felt her stomach twist inside of her. No, it wasn't just anyone wearing a MAGA hat. She had called the cops on someone else, someone important. It was Elon Musk, and by the time she realized her mistake, it was too late. Karen was not always an activist. Years ago, she was just another very emotional woman who broke down with every emotion she felt before she became a wife and a mom. She tried to balance her everyday life, which included being a wife, a mother, a marketer for one of the best marketing companies in California, and her book club meetings. Unfortunately, everything changed when the California fire incident happened. It took a lot from her memories of California, her job, and 2 kids leaving her with just 1 kid. She lost her world, all she had worked for over the years, her life's achievement, all gone. Her only surviving child was even taken from her because the doctors didn't see her as mentally fit enough to raise a child in her condition, especially with all she had just been through. This tore through Karen as it all happened. Her child was taken to stay with her grandparents in New York. Everyone who lost something in the California fire eagerly waited for someone to be held responsible for what the citizens passed through, but nothing like that happened. All they got were new promises from male politicians, most with MAGA hats, and they still had nothing meaningful to say. They were all promises the outgoing administration had made. Karen turned to drinking and substances while in the accommodation provided to her by the Californian government. She became a nuisance as she was always violent whenever she was intoxicated. Her neighbors tried all they could to help, and eventually she was sent for psychological evaluation. It helped her become better, not until she got something else to help her. Karen began planning protests from the online space, joining Facebook groups, starting trends on X, and not long after, from online spaces they were on site and attending protests in person. Defenders of democracy, or justice defender, they called themselves. They were out to war against anything and anyone that didn't align with their view. This made Karen popular online, as she had built a fierce reputation for exposing people who didn't align with her worldview. It gave her a sense of justice and power, a rush. She thought it would fill that hole inside her, after all she had lost. With every call-out and public shaming, she felt like she was changing the world with one viral post or comment after another. Karen became a stalker to most of these politicians, tailing them to get the best of them and expose them online. Eventually, she became a nuisance because she started blowing things out of proportion. Her parents got worried for her, and they refused to let Karen see her child as they didn't want her to be a negative influence. No matter how much the kid wanted to see her, they didn't allow it, as they tried to explain that it was for the best of both mother and child. Karen had been arrested a few times. This one time, she was almost sent to jail. But because of her history and psychological evaluation, she was sentenced to community service and mandated to see a shrink twice a week for 6 months. Eventually, Karen began to cool down, but that didn't stop her from attending protests or talking online. She got a job and started building her life back bit by bit, and it was working well. At least some parts of her no longer felt empty. She was finally given a chance to see her child, but was denied custody no matter how much she fought for it. Her parents knew how emotional she could get, and knew that the child around her was going to be a constant reminder of all she had been through. They didn't want a repetition, or a second Karen, as her only child had the possibility of becoming an emotional wreck like the mother. Once in a while at work, Karen had mental breakdowns, but with all she had learned from her shrink, she was able to not allow it to affect work and those around her. Gradually, she was getting better and rebuilding all she had lost. She would get her child back and marry again if possible. These thoughts helped her stay on track but didn't affect her programs as an activist. She always had time to be an activist. This time around, she didn't want others to suffer what she experienced, so she kept fighting online but not on site, so she wouldn't get caught and sent back to square one. It was a bright Saturday afternoon, and Karen decided to take a walk, clear her head, and maybe get something to eat. She strolled through the shopping district, stopping by a food truck to get some burritos. "I miss these," she thought, smiling as she moved on, and got an ice cream treat. With both packs in one hand and her phone in the other, she kept strolling while checking for anything new on her social media handles. She always had a determined expression whenever she was checking her phone. She didn't see anything new, so she concentrated on her stroll, but kept her sharp eyes looking for anything that could be considered problematic. Just then, her eyes caught something. No, it wasn't something, it was someone. A tall man, casually dressed in jeans and a black t-shirt. He looked okay, and everything was fine with him, but there was one offense: the MAGA hat he was wearing. Karen ran out of breath. It seemed like she was having a panic attack. She held her phone and the food packs, which she bought, very tight. She struggled to breathe and made sure she didn't fall. "So they now have the guts to casually walk around my area and city after all the failed promises," she thought. "I would not let him have his way, even if it means calling the cops on him," she thought to herself. She found her footing and followed the man carefully to avoid being seen as a threat. The time she spent stalking politicians back then wasn't a waste, as she picked up a few tricks on the job. She followed the man and then stopped at a corner when she saw him stop to observe a Tesla showroom. The man casually walked into the Tesla showroom and spoke with one of the sales attendants. Karen's heart was heavy. Why would someone with such a physique choose to stand with one of the things she was against? The MAGA hat stood for everything she hated about politics. To her, the hat was not just a hat. No, it was a statement that said politicians could do what they wanted and go free, without anyone holding them responsible for the sufferings the citizens faced. In her mind, anyone who wore it had to be trouble, a bully, and an oppressor. "Big story coming in soon. They don't own the place and they sure as hell don't own us," Karen posted on all her social media handles. She solicited for support from her followers while talking about the man with the MAGA hat and how she would see to it that justice prevailed. She dialed 911. "911, what's your emergency?" Karen reduced her voice so that she could sound panicked. "I am calling to report a suspicious man in a Tesla showroom. He is wearing a MAGA hat and he looks very dangerous. I think he might be planning something." "Can you describe how he behaves in a way that makes him look dangerous?" the dispatcher asked. "He's talking to people, asking questions, moving around like he owns the place or is casing the place for something else," she said quickly, not giving up herself. "He looks terrifying. He is also wearing sunglasses indoors, and that should be suspicious enough." "Sorry, ma'am, but wearing sunglasses indoors is not a crime and doesn't make him look suspicious. Do you have any idea if he is carrying any weapons?" Karen hesitated. "I don't know, but he could be." "All right, please give me your location and I will send officers your way." Karen smiled and gave the Tesla showroom location. She felt fulfilled and all she had to do was wait for the police to come. She positioned herself across the street, ready to record the arrest on her phone for her followers online. She wanted to see justice served, at the least. It would help suffice the hatred she felt for people who wore MAGA hats. She could hear the sirens from a distance heading her way. She saw 3 squad cars stop by the showroom. 6 officers came out of the 3 squad cars that parked, hands resting on their electric guns as they moved toward the showroom and approached the suspect inside. The suspect was just as described by the dispatcher's information. Karen smiled victoriously as she saw the officers move toward the suspect. However, her victory was not for long. As the officers entered the showroom and approached the suspect, she saw them stop. One officer removed the suspect's sunglasses, while another reached for his radio. Karen was confused. She didn't understand what was happening or what these officers were doing. She couldn't believe her eyes. They were smiling and conversing with the man in the MAGA hat. This wasn't the plan, she thought to herself. They should take him away already. What are they waiting for? She said in a low tone, boiling with rage. Karen's victorious smile turned into confusion. What is going on? Are the cops in on it too? Are they now part of a failed institution? Karen had these thoughts when she moved closer to the showroom and put her ear close to the glass, trying to see if she could hear the conversation they were having inside. She might be uncovering a bigger plot here. That was her new conviction. She was going to work with that. One of the officers in the showroom, who was speaking to the suspect, suddenly burst into laughter, and his colleagues followed. The officer was tapping the man on the shoulder and laughing hysterically. The man wearing the MAGA hat took a seat facing the windows of the showroom and removed the hat. Karen couldn't believe her eyes as she froze where she stood, trying to eavesdrop. No, it couldn't be. The man who wore the MAGA hat was popular and well known around the world. The 6-foot, 1.5-inch man who had a solid build was Elon Musk, the billionaire Elon Musk, the CEO of Tesla. He was the man who bought Twitter and changed its name to X, the owner of Neuralink, XAI, and the Boring Company. The world's richest man. It all felt like a dream. Someone please wake me up, she said. She had called the cops on the world's richest man and in his own store. Karen's face became emotionless. She couldn't think. Nothing was coming to her. She just stood there. She knew at this point that she was in for it. She had really pushed her luck. How was it possible that he was there on a day like this? Elon, already seated, smiled at the officers in his store with surprise before saying, "Did you guys really think I was a threat? Or are you pulling my legs? Maybe this is just one of your stunts to see and meet someone as popular as myself in your town and environs." One of the officers nervously smiled and replied, "Mr. Musk, we got a report from dispatch about a suspicious man in a MAGA hat. There was no way we would have known it was you. Besides, even if a physical description was given about who you were, we still wouldn't have known unless your name was mentioned, as there are a lot of people who would fit that description." Elon raised an eyebrow a bit. Furious, he stood up and spoke. "Suspicious? I own this store. Who could have done a thing like that?" The officers laughed nervously. "Well, we can see it was a false alarm. We will make sure to report it back to dispatch. We apologize for the inconvenience." Karen was scared. She knew she had messed up big time, and she needed to leave before she was caught snooping around. She didn't even notice that Elon had stood up and was walking the officers out. She tried to run away quietly, but heard a voice behind her. She knew there was no escape for her. "Hey, who are you and what are you doing here? This is trespassing, I hope you know, except you are a prospective client," one of the officers said as they moved closer to Karen. Karen froze for a while. She knew she was caught and needed a way out. By this time, Elon was standing in front of her with two of the officers, and they were all looking right at her. The officers turned their gaze to see Elon and knew what he would have them do. Karen's heart was pounding so fast and loud that she felt anyone could hear it from a mile away. Elon smiled and told the officers, "I don't think we might have to look far, because I have a feeling that I might know who made that call." The officers turned toward Karen. She couldn't move a muscle, as she was sweating profusely. She could feel the stares around her. Some bystanders were already gathering, and some took phones out to record what was happening. She stammered. "Ma'am," one of the officers said, walking closer to Karen as she was still trying to compose herself and not make things worse than they already were. "Were you the one who called 911 to report a threat? To be more specific, were you the one who reported this man as a threat?" Karen's mind was working tirelessly to provide an answer. She could lie or say she saw someone else by the corner make the call, and out of eagerness, she came to eavesdrop on what was going on to get the gist first and report it online before anyone else. However, she'd been standing there too long to look innocent. The security cameras in the area would give her up if they decided to dig deeper, and her history would also put her on the losing side. She had to end this here and now. There was no escape. She just had to say the truth and face whatever she got. She stammered. "I thought he was dangerous from how he was walking in the area and how he stopped to observe the showroom before going in," she finally said, realizing she might have given way more information than necessary. Elon chuckled. "Dangerous? How? For what, exactly? Buying my own cars? You didn't even see me with any weapon." Karen opened her mouth to talk, but nothing came out. She was going to be humiliated if anyone recognized her. The deed had been done. She just had to make sure it didn't go beyond what was happening right now. The officer sighed. Ma'am, calling the police without concrete evidence to back your claims wastes police resources. That is a serious offense. Elon laughed and told the officers to forget about it. Karen felt like the ground should open up and swallow her. I didn't mean any harm, she blurted out, even though she didn't sound convincing enough. Elon folded his arms and hummed for a while in thought, before grinning and saying, Oh, I believe you, but you will regret it. I have been following you on most of your social handles, but today, you get to trend for being in the wrong. Karen could feel her stomach twist inside her. How, sir? What do you mean? I was only trying to be a concerned citizen, Karen said. Elon smiled mischievously enough to hint to Karen that something big was about to hit her. Oh, you'll see. It's not a threat, but yeah, you'll see. Without much thought, Elon removed his phone from his pocket, took a picture of her, and started typing while the officers escorted her from the showroom. Karen got home, threw the pack on the floor, felt hazy, and still felt like her stomach was knotted inside. Her phone had not stopped buzzing since the officers escorted her away from the showroom. Yeah, she was done for. She knew it, but just to be sure of how much damage she had caused herself, she finally worked up the courage to look. Elon Musk had taken to his social handles and posted Karen's picture, saying, The cops in California visited me today in one of my showrooms because someone reported a suspicious man for wearing a MAGA hat. Seems like some people cannot just handle a billionaire shopping, especially in his own store. Crazy world, #MAGA, #free speech. It had gone viral in under an hour, with over 1 million likes and climbing fast. People were liking, commenting, and reposting it. The comments blew the roof as she was tagged in every one. Some comments read, Karen strikes again. Who else is so dumb to call the cops on Elon Musk? Elon should put her face on a Tesla billboard as customer of the month. Hope she enjoys being famous for the wrong reasons. Someone call Karen the defender of the galaxy. Karen fell sick immediately. She had become much more famous than she was, and no one was paying attention to her reason for doing what she did. She had a reason. Maybe it wasn't reason enough for some of them, but she had her reason. Her name started trending. People started making memes of her picture, which was attached to Elon's post. She had become famous. Within hours, her entire identity, history, background, and psychological evaluation test were online. Her Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and even an old MySpace account flooded with people calling her different names. Some called her a narc, and others went overboard with the insults. Since all her information was online, it wasn't long until her employers got dragged into the mess she had created for herself. Her job's official account with most of the senior staff and some of her colleagues were tagged in multiple posts. Some said, Hey, Karen's employer and colleagues, do you support your employees who make false police reports on private citizens and stir up trouble? Karen could see it all. She could imagine how messed up the whole situation was. She wouldn't have done it if she had known it was Elon. Her employer's account immediately responded, We do not accept inappropriate behaviors from our employees, and we do not condone false reporting or harassment of any kind. This matter is under internal review, and due punishment would be meted out. Karen felt like she was suffocating. Her phone rang the first time, but she didn't pick up. It was her boss. Then it rang again, and while she was thinking about whether to pick up, the caller hung up. A text came in right after the call got hung up. We need to talk first thing on Monday morning. This doesn't look good for us. Karen screamed and scattered her room. She had just destroyed her own life over a hat. This was back to square one. Elon's last words echoed in her mind. Oh, you'll see. And she did. What are your thoughts on Karen's move and Elon Musk's revenge strategy? Let us know in the comments. If you learned anything from this video, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to be notified of new posts. See you next time.